I never thought it would come to this, but when my landlord knocked on my door, I knew I was out of options. 3 months behind on rent, no way to pay, no one to turn to, and then he made me an offer I should have refused, but I didn't. Before we start, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it helps the channel grow tremendously. I truly appreciate all your support. Now, let's begin. I flinched at the knock. My robe had slipped open slightly as I rushed to the door, but I was too exhausted to care. When I opened it, Mr. Reynolds stood there, his eyes quickly taking in my dishevelled appearance. "You're 3 months behind on rent, Sophia," he said flatly. I pulled my robe tighter. "I know, Mr. Reynolds. I just need more time." He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. The air in my apartment seemed to thicken instantly. "Shame to see someone like you struggling," he murmured, his voice smooth. "So talented, yet so overwhelmed." Heat crawled up my skin. "I'll figure something out," he sighed, shaking his head. "Time doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart." I had tried everything: extra shifts at the cafe, borrowing from friends who were equally broke, cutting back on everything except the bare essentials. Nothing was enough. "Please, just a little longer," I whispered. He studied me for a moment. "Or maybe there's another way." My stomach tightened. There it was, the unspoken offer, now in the open. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "Come on, Sophia, you know what I mean." The room felt smaller, my robe felt thinner. "No one has to know," he said, "just between us." I hesitated, heart pounding. He watched me, waiting for my decision. I could feel the weight of my empty bank account, the past due notices, the growing debt. "I can make your problems disappear," he said. I exhaled shakily. No choices, no way out, just him. Slowly, I nodded. His smile deepened. Then he reached for my hand. "Smart decision." Mr. Reynolds led me into the living room, his demeanor calm but confident. The setting sun cast long shadows across the floor, painting everything in amber hues. He settled on my couch like he owned it, which technically he did, along with everything else in the apartment. "I've always admired your determination, Sophia," he said, voice low. "The way you keep pushing forward despite everything." I remained standing, arms crossed over my chest. "This isn't what I wanted." "Life rarely gives us what we want," he replied, "but sometimes it gives us what we need." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. 3 months of rent, forgiven, he said, placing it on the coffee table. "And a contract." "A contract?" I asked, confused. "I have a business proposition for you," he continued, his tone shifting to something more professional. "I own several properties around the city. They need management, someone trustworthy, detail-oriented." My brow furrowed. "You're offering me a job?" He nodded. "Property assistant. The pay would cover your rent with plenty left over. You'd have flexible hours, which would allow you to continue your studies." I stared at him, waiting for the catch. "Why me?" "Because despite your financial troubles, you've always kept this place impeccable. You're responsible, educated, presentable." His eyes met mine. Perfect for the role I have in mind. My heart was racing, but for entirely different reasons now. What exactly would I be doing? Managing tenant relations? Handling maintenance requests? Showing vacant units to potential renters? He paused. and occasionally accompanying me to business dinners. I need someone who can make a good impression. I swallowed hard. Business dinners? Nothing inappropriate, he clarified, though his smile held something I couldn't quite read. But in real estate, appearances matter. Having an intelligent, attractive woman by my side opens doors. The proposition hung in the air between us. It wasn't what I had expected. It wasn't what I had feared. But it still felt dangerous in its own way. Why not just hire a real estate agent? I asked. Because they're expensive and have their own agendas, he replied smoothly. I need loyalty, someone who understands what's at stake. I sat down across from him, my mind racing. I don't know anything about property management. I'll teach you. He leaned forward. You're a quick learner, Sophia. I've seen your university transcripts. The statement should have alarmed Mayhow had he seen my private records. But instead, it highlighted the power imbalance between us. He knew everything about me. I knew almost nothing about him. What happens if I say no? I asked quietly. His expression remained unchanged. Then you'll need to pay your back rent or face eviction. Business is business, after all. No real choice then, just the illusion of one. If I accept, I said slowly, I want everything in writing. Hours, responsibilities, pay rate, everything. He smiled, genuine this time. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. That night, I signed my name on his contract. Property assistant to Reynolds Real Estate. 20 hours a week, flexible scheduling, $25 an hour. My back rent forgiven as a signing bonus. It seemed too good to be true, and perhaps it was. The next evening, Mr. Reynolds picked me up in his black Mercedes. First day on the job, he announced as I slid into the passenger seat. We have dinner with potential investors. I'd worn my only nice dress dark blue, modest but flattering. I'd spent hours on my appearance, unsure of what was expected, but determined to appear professional. You look perfect, he said, eyes appraising me with approval. They'll be impressed. Who are they? I asked, as we drove through the city's glittering financial district. Business partners. Men with money looking for smart investments. His hand briefly touched my knee before returning to the steering wheel. Your job is simple. Be charming, attentive, and make them feel important. We pulled up to an upscale restaurant, the kind with no prices on the menu. The valet took his keys, and Mr. Reynolds placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me inside. Two men waited at a corner table. They stood as we approached, both in expensive suits, both with that same calculating look I was beginning to recognize in successful businessmen. Gentlemen, Mr. Reynolds greeted them. Allow me to introduce Sophia, my new property assistant. Their eyes assessed me, professional but invasive. I smiled, extending my hand with more confidence than I felt. A pleasure to meet you, I said, falling into the role I'd been assigned. The dinner proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance. I spoke when spoken to, laughed at their jokes, and described Miss Reynolds' properties with the rehearsed enthusiasm he had coached me on during the drive over. As the evening progressed, I noticed how the men deferred to me when I spoke about the neighborhood demographics, rental trends, and investment potentials. Information, mister. Reynolds had made me memorize was being received as expert insight. She's quite the find, one of them commented to Mr. Reynolds as if I weren't there. Where did you discover her? Sophia was hiding in plain sight, he replied, his hand finding its way to my shoulder. Sometimes the best talent is right under your nose. By the time dessert arrived, they were sold not just on the properties but on the entire package Mr. Reynolds was presenting. A successful businessman with a sharp, attractive assistant, a man who understood both numbers and people. They signed the preliminary agreement right there at the table. As we drove home, Mr. Reynolds was elated. "Perfect," he kept saying. "You were absolutely perfect." "I didn't do anything special," I replied. "You did exactly what was needed," he corrected me. "You made them comfortable. You made them trust me." He pulled up in front of my apartment building but didn't immediately unlock the doors. "This partnership will be worth millions, Sophia. Do you understand what that means?" I shook my head slightly. "It means you've earned a bonus." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another envelope, thicker than the one from yesterday. "Your commission." I took it hesitantly. "I didn't expect." 10% of my finder's fee?" he interrupted. "Standard in the industry." When I opened it later in my apartment, I nearly gasped. $5,000! More money than I'd ever held at once. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. During the day, I learned the property management business filing systems, tenant screening, maintenance coordination. In the evenings, I accompanied Mr. Reynolds to business dinners, charity events, and networking functions. Always the attentive assistant, always professional, always careful to maintain the exact distance he seemed to want close enough to appear devoted, far enough to remain appropriate. The money was better than anything I could have found elsewhere. My rent was now automatically deducted from my paycheck, with plenty left over. I started paying down my student loans, bought some proper business attire, even began saving. But there was always that underlying current between us. The knowledge of how our arrangement had begun, the power he still held. One evening, after a particularly successful networking event, Mr. Reynolds drove me home as usual, but instead of dropping me off, he parked and turned to face me. "You've exceeded my expectations," he said quietly. "Thank you," I replied, suddenly aware of how small the car felt. "I'm expanding the business," he continued. "Opening an office downtown. I want you to run it." I stared at him. "Me? But I've only been doing this for a month. And in that month, you've proven yourself more valuable than employees I've had for years." His eyes held mine. "I'm offering you a permanent position, full benefits, salary instead of hourly, your own office." It was everything I needed: financial security, career advancement, a path forward that didn't involve serving coffee to impatient customers. But why me? I asked again, the same question from our first real conversation. This time, his answer was different. "Because you understand the arrangement," he said simply. "You know what's expected and you deliver. No complications." The arrangement, the unspoken foundation of our professional relationship, the careful balance we maintained. "I need to think about it," I said. He nodded, unsurprised. "Take the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday." That weekend, I considered my options carefully. I could accept his offer and continue this strange, somewhat tense professional relationship. I could decline and find something else, though nothing that would pay as well or offer the same opportunities. Or I could walk away entirely, move to a different apartment, start over, By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I arrived at his office early, dressed in my most professional outfit. He was already there, reading the morning paper at his desk. "Good morning, Sophia," he greeted me, setting the paper aside. "Have you reached a decision?" I placed a folder on his desk. "I have." He opened it and found a business plan I'd spent the entire weekend creating. Property management specializing in student housing and young professionals. A detailed marketing strategy, budget projections, and expansion timeline. "What is this?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "My counteroffer," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I don't want to run your downtown office. I want to partner with you on this specific venture." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Partner? I know the student market better than anyone you could hire," I explained. "I know what they need, what they'll pay, and how to reach them. I've been one of them until very recently." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "And what would this partnership entail?" "I handle operations, tenant relations, and marketing. You provide the properties and initial capital. We split the profits 70-30 until I can buy in properly, then 60-40. The boldness of my proposal hung in the air between us. I'd expected immediate rejection, perhaps even anger. Instead, he laughed a genuine sound of surprise and what might have been respect. "Sophia Martin," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Who would have thought?" "Is that a yes?" I pressed. He stood and extended his hand across the desk. "It's a let's negotiate, which in business is as good as a yes." I took his hand, feeling for the first time like we were on equal footing. Not quite equals yet, but getting there. "One question," he said, still holding my hand. "What changed?" "A month ago, you could barely look me in the eye." I met his gaze steadily. "Nothing changed. I just learned how to play the game." His smile widened. "And now you want to change the rules." "I want to write my own rules," I corrected him. "Just like you do." 3 years later, Reynolds and Martin Property Management operates 30 buildings across 3 college towns. My name is on the company letterhead, my signature on the bank accounts. I have my own office in the downtown location he once offered me, but now I don't work for him, I work with him. The arrangement evolved into something neither of us expected. Something built on mutual respect, shared goals, and yes, the occasional tension that never quite disappeared. I still think about that night when I had nothing, when I answered the door in my robe, when I thought I had no choices. I was wrong. We always have choices. Sometimes we just need time to recognize them. So tell me, was I wrong to accept his first offer, knowing it would lead me here? Or was this exactly what I needed to find my own power? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.